Welcome back. I now recognize gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. McIver, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. I want to truly begin by recognizing and thanking the dedicated people who protect our airways, ports, and waterways, critical cyber infrastructure, and support our emergency preparedness systems across this country, many of whom have been forced to work without pay, which has been discussed over and over today in this committee. You do not deserve this if you are tuned in or in this chamber today. You deserve better. You already had to deal with a month and a half without pay last year because Republicans refused to support affordable health care. Now it's been over a month without pay again because once again, Republicans refuse to rein in ICE's cruelty. We're here, just to be clear, about ICE's cruelty that we've all had the opportunity, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, see play out in broad daylight in front of us all when they killed American citizens right before our eyes. This hits close to home for me because my district, New Jersey's 10th Congressional District, is home to one of the largest airports in the country, Newark Liberty Airport. I have heard personal stories of TSA workers having to skip meals or take their kids out of daycare. These are the real-world consequences of Republicans' agenda. On top of that, ICE is now stationed in Newark Liberty Airport, adding stress, fear, and government waste to an already chaotic situation. And on top of that, chilling and drinking coffee. Acting Administrator McNeil, you mentioned earlier in one of your testimonies that ICE was helping TSA agents operate the CAP machine, which basically, for those who do not know, validates IDs at TSA checkpoints. ICE does not have the specialized skills or training with that technology. Most of them only have 41 days of training that we heard in the last hearing of training to be an ICE agent. So let alone, they surely do not have training on this specialized technology. How are they helping operate this machine, this technology? How is that possible?
Congresswoman, we do have training for the operation of the travel document checker, and during the last 43-day shutdown, we also had to train additional employees to operate the TDC, including airport staff and others that volunteered to help us during that extended shutdown. And this time around, we're doing the same thing with the
ICE agents. Folks who got here to the airport this week, you offered them training on the CAP machine already?
We have spent several days doing training on multiple different functions.
Several days. Today is Wednesday. So when were they getting serval training? Was it this week or last week?
It was this week.
Okay, so they started getting training on Monday?
Correct.
And you talked about like your training and everything that goes into TSA, being a TSA agent that takes 6 months. You're telling me that you were able within 72 hours to train ICE agents how to operate the CAT technology system.
The travel document checker function is one of the non-specialized screening functions of TSA. And so where others can come in, we can train them to conduct this function while we focus our TSO workforce on some of the more highly skilled screening procedures, security screening procedures at the checkpoint.
Can you run through again what ICE is doing at these airports? Because at my airport, I've spoken to them. I had multiple calls with each of them, and basically ICE is standing in the lobby area, not operating these machines like you said. I don't know if this happened in every other airport because only could speak to Newark Liberty Airport, but they're not doing anything other than being accompanied with the Port Authority police officer and standing in the lobby. So, I mean, what are they doing? Like, what's the list of duties that you are allowing ICE agents basically to do when it comes to TSA screenings?
Yeah, so they're helping us on several different functions, including queue management, helping us with exit lane staffing, divesting, giving passengers instructions on how to load up their bins and all of that, and then helping operate the travel document checker as well. And all of these require certain levels of training, and we've done that over the first few days of this week. And obviously, when we roll out operations, it takes a while to really get folks, embedded into our operations, and it's gone extremely well. And our feedback from the passengers and our field leadership has been very positive.
Well, I wish I could say the same thing for Newark Liberty Airport. That's not the case there. Folks are really annoyed, just seeing them standing around because once again, I'm telling you critical information, factual information that they're not doing any of that you just ran down at Newark Liberty Airport. So obviously there's some disconnect in what is going on and what is happening. I just want to point out, Chairman, I'm not sure what's wrong with the clock, but it definitely hasn't been 5 minutes. Not unless I'm just crazy. It's been a long hearing, but I'm down to 3 seconds, and that seems like that went really quickly. I will end with one thing. Acting Administrator McNeil, do you believe that, do you support a bill just to fund TSA at this moment in time?
I support the funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which includes TSA, but as I mentioned earlier, we don't function in a silo at the Department of Homeland Security.
I mean, your responsibility is TSA, though.
I am
So are
part
you
of the
representing
leadership team of the
TSA or
Department of
Homeland Security? Which one do you represent, Homeland Security or TSA?
We are a one team, one mission at DHS.
Oh, that's unfortunate, and I hope TSA members are seeing this because your main function and responsibility should be of TSA and protecting them and making sure that they get paid. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Biggs, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, for holding this hearing on the Democrat shutdown of DHS. And I would like to thank these witnesses for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. We appreciate the work that you do to keep our nation safe, even when the job is difficult. Over 260,000 Americans are going to work right now without a paycheck. I've been back and forth from South Carolina to Washington numerous times since this shutdown started. I've stood in those airport lines. I've talked to the TSA agents, and they are working, and they're working very hard. They're polite. They're doing their job. And frankly, I don't know how they're doing it because a lot of them are trying to raise a family, pay a mortgage, and keep up with their bills. We are seeing reports of TSA agents selling their own plasma just to put gas in their cars to drive to work. And it's appalling to me that we're sitting here today arguing about this. TSA workers have gone nearly half this fiscal year without pay. The lines are longer, the morale is gone, and people are quitting because they literally can't afford to stay in their jobs. But most disturbingly, look at what happened at LaGuardia just 3 nights ago. We saw a deadly collision on a runway. 2 pilots lost their lives and dozens were injured. While we wait for the full investigation, we already know our aviation system is under unprecedented stress because of the stalemate. When you stop paying the people who keep our country safe, you are playing with fire. Meanwhile, nobody on this dais is missing a paycheck. Not one person here has missed a mortgage payment or skipped a meal. I voted twice and plan to do it again to reopen DHS. We need to get these people paid and stop putting the cost of your political games on the backs of working Americans. Admiral, in South Carolina's 3rd District, readiness is non-negotiable. My Made in America Defense Act, which was signed into law by President Trump, cut red tape for our upstate manufacturers who produce critical defense supplies. But while we work to move things faster, this DHS shutdown is creating a new bottleneck. Senate Democrats are playing political games, and it's stalling our progress. Admiral, specifically, how is this instability degrading your ability to protect these critical defense supply chains right now?
Thank you for your question. Our defense industrial base is suffering right now. We need to rebuild it. Right now, what we are seeing is ships in our shipyards where stop work is going on because we cannot pay the bills. We are seeing crucial readiness that needs to be done in the repair of these ships, and the shipyard officers are not doing what our Coast Guard people are doing and working without a paycheck. They're asking us to leave those shipyards because we cannot pay the bills. So while we're allowed to contract, we can't pay the bills. And in many cases, shipyards and industrial-based leaders, that's 25% of their total income. So trying to get to them, to help them with cash flow, we're not doing it. What we worry about is that's not only a near-term impact, but as we bid for these contracts with these companies in the future, they're not going to come to the Coast Guard. They'll go to the Navy, they'll go to the Marines, they'll go to the others receiving a budget.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for your service. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it is so interesting to me. We're sitting here, and what you have are members of both sides, Republican and Democrats alike, are telling each one of you, Coast Guard, TSA, CISA, FEMA, that your work is important. We value your work. We honor your service to this country, and you should be paid. There seems to be unanimous agreement. Everyone here is saying you should be paid. No one is saying you should not be. No one. The problem is, what we have a disagreement on is ICE, how it's functioning in this country, and how it's terrorizing the citizens of this country. And why we can't come together and agree and fund the things there's no disagreement on, each one of your agencies, and then respectfully disagree on what we disagree on and work on that. That's a very real pragmatic, very responsible solution to where we are. All the important work you're doing gets funded. All of the employees you oversee gets handled. All the important work you do for our national security gets paid for. Congress can work and agree on the things we agree on, and then respectfully disagree where we disagree. And then our country is not shut down in a travel nightmare. And you know what? That is exactly what is before the House. I've signed a discharge petition to pay each one of you. Every one of my Democratic colleagues has said, we agree with all this rhetoric on the right that you should be funded. That's what the American people want. That is responsible government. That is where when people come together, members of both sides, you should be able to. All this pomp from the Republicans is ridiculous because they are holding this agreement hostage for ICE. We're saying we want to continue to work on this and we want to make improvements, but they're like, no, no, no. We're going to insist on the issue that we have no agreement on in this country and put you guys all at hostage for that. And that is what is wrong with government. That is why people don't trust the process. That's why the American people are so frustrated. There's absolutely no reason for our airports to be in this crisis and all of the men and women that you serve. And I agree with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I travel through DFW all the time. The men and women of the TSA are doing the very best they can under very difficult circumstances. We need FEMA in Texas. It's a critical organization. We need you to be functioning. I'm ready to fund all 4 of your agencies right now. I was ready to do it before I voted to, signed on to make that happen. But unfortunately, partisanship is getting in the way of you guys being funded yet again. It's another exhibit in a long line of exhibits of how dysfunctional Congress is. Because right now, Republicans, they could fund you, but they're choosing not to. There is a vehicle on the table to fund each one of your agencies right now, and Republicans are refusing to do it. And let me just tell you why we're saying this is critically important. In my district, a constituent that I had was part of the Afghanistan evac program. He worked alongside our military in Afghanistan, was brought to this country by the United States of America. We brought him and his family here. He was detained by ICE and taking his kids to school, and he's dead 24 hours later. And that cannot be allowed to happen in this country. He's a father of 6, was working. Do you know how many criminal convictions he has? 0. That is why ICE is so broken, and that is what is so wrong. And your agencies should never be held hostage to justify the rogue terroristic attacks that these agents are doing upon the citizens and the people of this country. And I am sorry that Republicans are holding you hostage, because we want TSA functional. Our air traffic control system is fundamental to this country. The Coast Guard, you do admirable work, sir. And the men and women in the Coast Guard are heroes and should be paid. But what is happening and what happened to my constituents should never be allowed to happen in this country, and we're going to hold the line until we can make some serious corrections to what ICE is doing. And I'm out of time, and I yield back. Oh, wait, one thing. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to offer into the record an article titled U.S. Flight Attendants Demand Pay for TSA to keep airports secure and not create havoc with ICE.
Without objection. For clarification purposes, House Republicans have voted to fund the Department of Homeland Security twice, including the 4 agencies that are here today. So that's for clarification purposes. I now recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Evans, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and of course to the witnesses for coming. Wow, I can't believe I just heard my ears. I spent 12 years in the U.S. Army, deployed overseas as part of the global war on terror, another 10 years in law enforcement. I literally just heard my colleague across the aisle say ICE is committing terrorist attacks. I don't think you can get a clearer example of where folks stand when my colleagues on the other side of the aisle compare federal law enforcement to terrorists at a time where we have literal terrorists that I deployed to fight committing attacks in the homeland. That's incredibly disappointing to me. It's incredibly disappointing to me because as a police officer for 10 years, I know what the path was that led me to Congress. I watched all of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle push to defund law enforcement. They ran on this message. They opened our borders, and that's what's happening today. Democrats continue to defund the police just by refusing to pass the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations bill. I know it, I saw it as a cop, it's what's playing out today, and they've done it not once, but twice. This isn't conjecture, go look up the votes. H.R. 7147, this is the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations bill. Look up the votes on H.R. 7147. Look up the votes on H.R. 7747. This is the second Department of Homeland Security Appropriations bill. Go look at the votes, follow the actual facts. And then, Mr. Chairman, not just me saying this and referring to the votes, this is The Hill. I'll read you the headline. DHS shutdown stretches to 35 days as Democrats block funding bill. A motion to advance the bill failed 47 to 37, falling short of the 60 votes it needed to overcome a Democrat filibuster. Centrist Senator John Fetterman was the only Democrat to vote yes. Mr. Chairman, with your consent, I move to admit this to the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. We know what's happening right now. We have the Department of Homeland Security shut down because Democrats have never moved on from defunding the police. They've never moved on from their open borders policies. The votes back it up. The Hill backs it up. And while this is happening, critical agencies like CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is being shut down. CISA has blocked billions of cyber threats to our civilian networks and critical infrastructure in 2025. The Coast Guard, key to combating drug trafficking in the Western Hemisphere, and I'll remind my colleagues, drugs under the previous administration killed 400,000 Americans. That's shut down. Wildfire risk in Colorado is at an all-time high due to drought and an unusually dry winter. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which ensures that law enforcement is trained, is shut down, which is ironic because I keep hearing from Democrats that they want ICE agents to be trained better, but they're shutting down the very entity that helps with federal law enforcement training. TSA callouts are at a record high across U.S. airports, and as of today, 460 officers have left TSA. Travelers are seeing long lines, and you can see behind me that we literally have Denver International Airport, which is the airport I fly in and out of, asking for gift cards and donations to their TSA agents so that they can maybe make ends meet and keep coming to work. And so my first question to Administrator McNeil, how many people, especially parents, would accept a job with the promise of intermittent gift cards instead of a secure paycheck, and how have these shutdowns impacted your agency's ability to recruit and retain officers?
I think you're absolutely right, Congressman. We have heard a report back of folks that have been interested in joining the TSA and had plans to, but you know, with the situation this year and us being in our third shutdown, it's really hard for them to go home and tell their family, this isn't the job that I'm going to take. It's a job that pays me half the time for my work. And so I think that is really a challenge for us. And then for the officers that are there, they're continuing to show up under duress, honestly, right? Financial duress, and they're continuing their commitment to the traveling public, and we could not be prouder of them.
Our thanks to those TSA officers. In my remaining 45 seconds to FEMA, I spent 12 years in the U.S. Army, Black Hawk helicopter pilot. I've flown on wildfires, fought wildfires. We're facing historic drought in the West. Tell me how FEMA not having the funding impacts their ability to do the pre-planning for some of these major disasters, including wildfires.
Yes, Congressman. Like I mentioned earlier, we have about 45,000 people a week. Those are emergency responders, leads for states on response efforts that are missing out on critical training. Wildfires are ongoing, as you know, right now, and those impacts of them not getting that training may not be measured, but it is being missed out. I hear every day from external partners how much it's impacting them.
Our national security is at risk. Fund the Department of Homeland Security. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez, for 5 minutes questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are over 700 TSA employees in Puerto Rico right now who are about to miss their third paycheck. And there is a proposal to fund TSA and pay these employees. The Republicans are holding back on it. I think this is a disgrace. Ms. McNeil, President Trump has ordered ICE agents to airports to supplement security during this shutdown, correct?
That's correct.
And those ICE agents are getting paid, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And those TSA agents they're supposed to support are not getting paid, correct?
That's correct.
So we have a policy in place where we don't pay the people who are qualified to do the job. As a result, they're missing out, they're not going to work, they're quitting, and we're sending people who are getting paid to do a different job. How is that fair?
I don't think that's policy. That's a matter of not having funding.
It's a matter of not having funding, and there is a proposal to fund it and to solve this problem. But we have a system where we have a group that is paid to watch the lines and then highly trained TSA professionals working for free. Now, you'd agree that a TSA officer is better qualified to handle aviation security than an ICE agent, right?
That's what TSA officers are trained to do.
Right, so we are penalizing the most qualified people. What is TSA doing right now to keep those families who are not getting paid from being evicted?
I'm here today to ask for funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
They're not doing anything, and they're not expressing, and you as an agency head are not expressing support for proposals to fund TSA and delay funding for ICE, who are getting paid. What are they doing to...
That is your responsibility to fund the U.S. government.
And there is a proposal in place for that, and Republicans keep rejecting it. What are they doing to help feed those employees and their families?
We're doing
Nothing.
food pantry.
Now, is it true that DHS
donations.
has told state governors that they can't support federal employees with state funds?
That is not true. There are laws in how we can use donated funds, and where they have offered, we've
Has
been able to deploy
TSA
that to
told
support our
governors that they cannot pay TSA employees their salaries?
That is correct. That is a matter of law.
Is that a matter of law or a matter of policy?
It's a matter of law, from my understanding.
Do you support changing that law in the future?
Well, that would be the role of Congress to change laws.
But would you support it? Would you support paying TSA employees in spite of government shutdowns in the future?
I think that we need to look really hard after we come out of the shutdown to ensure that the continuity of our operations.
We have
is
proposals
maintained.
for that, and they have not been voted on. I want to move over to FEMA. Ms. Barden, how many FEMA staff are currently reporting to their workplace but not performing work?
I'm not familiar with your question.
We've seen reports that many FEMA employees are being asked to report to work but not to do any actual work. Is that correct?
Everyone who's reporting to work in my staff is completing the functions that they're allowed to do under the LAPS guidance.
Well, we are concerned to learn that FEMA leadership issued an agency-wide directive last month ordering all activities to cease, including work by staff funded through Disaster Relief Fund, who are still being paid during the shutdown. And these are the very employees responsible for overseeing long-term recovery efforts, like the projects underway in Puerto Rico. These projects operate on strict performance timelines. Every single day counts, and delays are not an option. And this is compounding existing delays caused by the previous secretary's disastrous policy requiring personal approval for FEMA projects over $100,000. And now we're hearing that FEMA staff are just sitting around playing video and watching TV on the clock. That is a complete waste of taxpayers' money. Now, how is this top work order impacting long-term recovery for places like Puerto Rico?
I'm not familiar with the exact stop of previous DHS guidance that went out, so I will look into that and get back to you. I understand we do have new...
You can get back to us on that. And now, because I'm almost out of time, the director of FEMA's recovery office in Puerto Rico was fired last month on the same day as a meeting between then Secretary Noem and our governor. DHS has not provided us or the public with a reason for this termination, and we find it suspicious that FEMA's recovery director for Puerto Rico was fired mere hours after their meeting. Did you have a role in Mr. Garcia Martino's termination?
In my capacity, I'm at FEMA. I'm not privy to how that meeting was, and I was not part of that meeting.
But did you have a role in his termination?
No, I did not.
Do you know why he was terminated?
I'm not familiar with the exact details, but
We think transparency is important, ambitious, and disruptive to Puerto Rico's long-term recovery efforts. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. And I appreciate my colleague's comments, but for clarification purposes, House Republicans have voted twice to fund the Department of Homeland Security, including the 4 agencies that are here today. I now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Strong, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and I thank the witnesses for being here today. We are less than 100 days away from hosting the world's largest sporting event featuring 104 matches across 16 cities, equivalent to 3 Super Bowls a day for 5 weeks. And Democrats continue to put politics over security of our nation. All members will be given another chance to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security this week. I look forward to voting for a 3rd time along with my Republican colleagues to fully fund the department and each of your agencies. I'm especially grateful to the TSA workforce at Huntsville International Airport, where operations are continuing, albeit at a little slower pace, despite the challenges and physical strain caused by the shutdown. However, not every small airport has the same level of community support. Ms. McNeil, as TSO call-out rates continue to rise, are smaller airports at risk to reduce operations or temporary closure, and what would be the impact on the communities that rely on them?
Thank you, Congressman. As the shutdown drags on and we see increases in call-out rates, we'll have to make real-time decisions on how we operate. And so, for example, we have many small airports that operate 1 or 2 lanes, and a few call-outs could really severely impact our ability to run the operations. And so in those scenarios, we would not be able to open the checkpoint at the airport.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Could you also tell us how the current lapse in appropriations affects TSA contracts, equipment development, and pilot programs, and what the operational consequences of those disruptions are?
Thank you, Congressman. So yes, during a shutdown, there are delays to our acquisition and procurement and deployment of new technology. And then also on the research and development side, that largely stops as well. And so it does really hinder our ability to modernize TSA and deploy additional technology out there and get the tools out there in the hands of our officers, the tools that they need and deserve to do their jobs every day.
Thank you. Turning to Ms. Barton, with over 40 years of experience as a first responder, assistant fire chief, I take public safety and emergency response efforts very seriously, especially those undertaken by our firefighters. How are U.S. Fire Administration operations, including the National Fire Academy, being affected, and how could a prolonged shutdown impact the preparedness of firefighters across the country?
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for your service. The USFA has had to cancel several of their training and postpone that to include Police Week that they host in Emmitsburg as well. These critical trainings being postponed are impacting training and responsibilities throughout the nation, as well as the opportunity for emergency responders to coordinate and share lessons with each other in person.
Thank you. Admiral Allen, I was encouraged to see the Coast Guard exceed in fiscal year 2025 recruiting goals, and I was especially glad to see the announcement of the new training center in my home state of Alabama, which will help strengthen the Coast Guard's workforce pipeline. However, that kind of momentum can be fragile during funding lapse. How has the current shutdown disrupted recruiting, training, and your programs?
Sir, thank you for that question. Just a couple points on that. So as we try to get recruits to our training center, Cape May, we're seeing about a 10% delay in those guys actually getting there. So we are already falling behind on the numbers that are there. Second, our food services culinary specialists that make the food there, they rely on vendors in the towns to deliver food. We are not paying those vendors anymore, and we're worried that any day they're going to stop showing up with food to pay our recruits that are at our training centers and our other places.
Thank you.
And I think, while we've had great retention, now we are dealing with, hey, if you go to other services, you'll get paid. DHS, continues to be a question.
Thank you. Ms. Barton, FEMA's Center for Domestic Preparedness is in my home state of Alabama. Are the students that are typically trained at the center, how would you assess the impact of these classes and postponements of national security and readiness overall?
Overall, there's been several training, about 45,000 students and emergency responders who are able to participate in those trainings are having to postpone those. Travel has been canceled. I hear firsthand the impacts. Many folks are getting concerned the closer we get to hurricane season and just all the various response situations that come up. There may not be an exact metric, but as the days go on, it continues to get worse.
Thank you. Thank you. And Chairman Garbarino, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Poe, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the ranking members, and thank you to the witnesses that are here today. I'm really very happy that we are having this discussion. We all recognize that the Department of Homeland Security has a critical mission to protect American people. This is why my Democratic colleagues and I have introduced legislation to fund TSA, FEMA, CISA, as well as the Coast Guard to end this shutdown. Sadly, Republicans are blocking these bills to stop reforming ICE and are holding agencies hostage to hide responsibility. The deployment of violent agents into cities like Minneapolis shows why we cannot give ICE a blank check. We cannot continue to let them terrorize our communities and kill our neighbors. And we should get them out of our airports now. Last summer's reconciliation bill gave ICE and CBP enough funding to sustain themselves for years. So why then are Republicans still asking for more money for ICE? If my GOP colleagues cared about keeping our country safe, they would sign our discharge petition and force a floor vote on our bill to fund TSA and other DHS offices like FEMA and the Coast Guard immediately. Our bill would do everything possible to fund the Department of Homeland Security while supporting reforms that are supported by Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike. The problems we've seen over the last several years, the last several weeks, let's be clear, the last several weeks are not all due to the shutdown. Yet DHS has launched a misinformation campaign to mask their own failures by blaming it on the shutdown. Let me give you an example. The FIFA World Cup Security Grant Program. Last summer, Congress approved $625 million for host cities to enhance security and preparedness for the games. FEMA, an agency the president has gutted, was tasked with administering this grant program. Initial estimates place the delivery of these federal dollars in the hands of host cities by late fall. On November 12th of last year, FEMA's own announcement stated that this money would be awarded no later than January 30th, 2 weeks before the DHS shutdown began. But let me just be clear. If you go to the FEMA website, their very own website, which was published and released last year in August 13th, in 2025, it indicated that it would be awarding many of these projects by no later than September 30th of 2025. That was last year. We are still today talking about this. So, but what FEMA has done, it has absolutely blew past all of those deadlines, leaving host cities in the dark on if this security funding would ever be delivered. Clearly, it was only just delivered for some of them, not all, just this past month. After so long, after so many of us talked about that. Our committee heard testimony from tournament organizers about the chaos and the uncertainty FEMA's delays caused. The growing backlash forced former Secretary Noem to imply that she couldn't award this money because of the shutdown. But last week, all of a sudden, the money was made available anyway. Well, which is it? Is it the shutdown? Is it last year's announcement? What is it? Clearly had absolutely nothing to do with the shutdown. Ms. Barton, thank you very much for being here. You worked in the office of the Secretary. Why blame the shutdown for DHS' own failure to deliver the World Cup grant funding on time?
Congresswoman, I also share your concerns on delays. However, we will say that this is the third shutdown we've experienced. And
Absolutely, no.
During
I'm sorry,
shutdowns,
Ms.
we
Barton.
prioritize the
My
most
question
urgent
to
life.
you was, why would you blame the deadline, the failure to submit those grants on time on the shutdown, when in fact that occurred prior to the shutdown? Please just answer the question. Unless you are unable to answer it because of your own department's very own doing. So please just answer the question. Why blame the shutdown on something that you all had the ability to do prior to the shutdown?
When turning on a machine after being off for over a month, these impacts are going to go beyond. Even though we get funded, the impacts will happen.
Ms. Barton, did I not say that we had the, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Thank you for your levity. Ms. Barton, I clearly am out of time. Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me that, the ability to speak beyond that. Let me just say that that's a question that still lies in front of us. We certainly need to do something about it. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Fong, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the panelists for not only your testimony, but your service to our country and your teams as well. America's Homeland Security is not a political game. Every agency tasked with our Homeland Security needs to be fully operational at full strength, period. Last month, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bipartisan funding package for the Department of Homeland Security. Regrettably, Senate Democrats chose to abandon this bipartisan and bicameral deal, which brings us here today. Our nation, unfortunately, is less safe, and Homeland Security personnel are continuing to work without pay. In my home state of California, we are preparing for the World Cup. We're preparing for the Olympics. However, attendee safety and the success of these games hinge on the Department of Homeland Security's ability to work with state and local law enforcement agencies, even through government shutdowns. I wanted to ask each of the panelists, I know each of you have a different role to play in the planning, but have there been any key planning milestones that have been missed due to the shutdown when it comes to the planning for these international events? And if DHS were fully funded today, how long would it take to get back on track? And we can start from that role and go on down.
Yes, sir. As we do planning for these big events, we have missed milestones, and our estimate is every day that there's a shutdown, it takes us 2.5 days to recover.
Ms. McNeil.
Congressman, I guess that the impact is felt really on multiple fronts, but first it's about staffing the airports that are supporting the FIFA locations, and we have plans in place, but that is based on, what we understand our laydown to be. If we see a spike in attrition, we're gonna have to pivot. And as I mentioned earlier, hiring and training takes a while, and so that will impact our posture for FIFA. On the other part of this is the counter-UAS mission. Our federal air marshals are acquiring technology, and with the delay in funding and the shutdown, that is pushing that to the right, and we're running right up to the wire in our ability to procure, deploy, and train with these counter-UAS technologies.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Congressman. There are impacts across all segments of CISA's mission at this time. It is, a burden borne nearly exclusively by our employees and the contractors that are supporting them. So whether it's for World Cup or America 250 events or LA 2028 prep, we're going to continue to see compounding impacts here. They're going to affect both the items that require proactive planning like that and our ability to have a ready workforce that's going to be able to respond to the reactive elements within our threat environment.
Thank you, Congressman. FEMA's role in the FIFA World Cup planning, we provide critical funding, training, and preparedness support to these communities, including security planning. The compounded effects of multiple shutdowns over the last 6 months clearly has made us miss some milestones, to include the funds that the Congresswoman had just mentioned as the FIFA World Cup funding. As this continues, I imagine we will continue to see more breakdowns as we do not have our entire team in place to work on these efforts.
So no doubt the consequences are very real. This is not an academic conversation that we're having, and American lives and the lives of our visitors, international visitors, are put at risk. In terms of coordination, how has the shutdown affected information sharing and coordination with local law enforcement and host committees? Our fusion, joint task forces, our interagency planning groups, how has that been affected, and what gaps are forming right now? Now, we'll start with that questions for everybody.
Sir, I'll start. So we continue that function as far as intelligence sharing and law enforcement track. What I would say is when you look at these events, these are very complicated events. These are not pickup games. They require a lot of coordination, synchronization, training, and we're looking to bring in new assets and training on those assets. So it's not only a point of intelligence, but what we do with that intelligence to buy the right assets and get the right training for the people that are doing it.
Congressman, we are also continuing the collaboration with state and local authorities on intelligence and information sharing, but we're not working at full force right now because during a shutdown, we have many mission enabling and other functions that are furloughed, and so it is impacting the pace at which we are doing that, and we're looking forward to getting back to normal order.
Intelligence information exchange continues. It persists through the funding lapse at CISA, but I will tell you that the capacity for us to continue to do that is becoming exceedingly strained. I have a single day, just a couple of weeks ago, that we received 6 resignation notices from the highly technical subject matter experts that we have in places like our threat hunt and incident response sections. That's not a sustainable model going forward, and at some point, the compounding risk within this dynamic threat landscape is going to cause real damage to American people.
I've run out of time, but I thank you for the information. It's a very sobering assessment, and we need to get the Department of Homeland Security open as quickly as possible. Today, we need the Senate Democrats to take up our bill. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Anderson, you've been at CISA since September of 2025, is that correct?
Yes, Congressman, it is.
Okay. And I presume you have some awareness, you've reviewed what took place at CISA between January 2025 and September 2025. And I want to walk through that time period because I think it's important context for your testimony today. Is it true that CISA's workforce was reduced by approximately 1,000 employees in early 2025? Yes or no?
I'd have to get you follow-on information about
It's
the
true.
early 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is it true that some CISA employees were reassigned from CISA to ICE and CBP in 2025? Yes or no?
To the best of my understanding, less than 10 employees
Yes,
have
it's
been
true.
reassigned.
Is it true that CISA's previous acting director, who was recently removed from his position, failed the polygraph test, which was required to access certain sensitive documents? Yes or no?
I'd have to refer you to our security office.
It's been widely reported that is true. Is it true that the senior staff leading CISA's Secure by Design initiative, which promotes the development of more secure technologies, left the agency? Is that true?
We've seen vacancies in several spots that will continue to compound.
Senior staff leading that effort left. Is it true that the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which provided cybersecurity services to state and local governments, was eliminated? Is that true?
That is not true.
It is true.
The MSISAC continues to exist today, sir. Our funding for it through the cooperative agreements does not. That ended in September of 2025.
The funding's kind of an important part of it for the state and local governments who participated in it. The funding is kind of a critical piece of it. Is it true that the Election Infrastructure Sharing and Analysis Center was eliminated?
No, sir. Again, it was not eliminated. We continue to.
Was the funding for it eliminated?
I would have
Yes.
to get back to you with.
Is it true that the Cyber Safety Review Board was disbanded?
The Cyber Safety Review Board Authority still exists, and should there be an incident.
Is it operating? Is it functional today?
Sir, the secretary has the ability to call a
It's
CSA
not.
together.
Is it true that the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee was eliminated and is not functioning today?
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch which particular.
Cybersecurity Advisory Committee.
To the best of my knowledge, that does not exist today.
Is it true that the Critical Infrastructure Partnership Advisory Council no longer exists today, to use your language? Yes or no?
Sir, we have the authority to be able to move forward with CPAC. I can't publish it in the Federal Register notice because it's not necessarily directly touch on imminence of threat and protection of life and property.
No longer operating. Was operating in 2024, is not today. I want to make sure I have this right. Before a single dollar of appropriations lapsed before this shutdown, this administration cut 1,000 employees, reassigned others to immigration enforcement, gutted advisory structures, eliminated information sharing partnerships. When I read your opening statement, I was struck by a few things that you wrote. You said, and I'm quoting directly, the shutdown prevents us from operating under normal conditions. You said many proactive services, planning, and industry and stakeholder engagements are paused or significantly scaled back. You said planned engagements with critical partners are on hold, all because of the shutdown. Those statements are true. But here's the irony. Long before this shutdown, your agency's workforce was gutted. Advisory committees and stakeholder engagements were shut down. Information sharing centers eliminated. The shutdown didn't start this crisis at CISA. Donald Trump did. And why? Because in 2020, CISA refused to validate his stolen election conspiracy theory, and one of your predecessors, a patriot, refused to validate President Trump's stolen election conspiracy theory. The legislation Democrats have put forward would fund CISA and pay your staff, but what we really need is an administration that treats cybersecurity as a national security priority and rebuilds from the terrible damage that's been done. Mr. Anderson, I want to go back to Acting Director Gata McCullough and the failed polygraph test. That was a polygraph required to access sensitive documents. My understanding is 6 CISA employees were put on leave for following the protocols required by CISA and the agency that owned that information. And I want to ask you, will you commit to working with this committee to ensure that the employees who were put on leave or reinstated, any derogatory information added to their personnel records are removed? And if you won't commit to that, will you commit to briefing me and any other members of this committee about that incident? I want to know why Director Gata McCullough failed the polygraph test and why 6 employees who were following the agency's protocol were put on leave.
Yes, sir. We would be happy to be able to share that information
Okay.
with this committee. However, I would have to refer you to the Department of Homeland Security's headquarters elements. That's actually leading any investigation pertaining to that. That is not an item that's being investigated within CISA.
Well, will you commit to briefing us and helping to facilitate a briefing on that incident?
I'm committed to going back to DHS and carrying forward that request back, sir, to be able to share that information with you.
All right, thank you.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Van Epps, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this critically important hearing and to our witnesses for joining us. We are nearly 40 days into this feckless shutdown. The cost of this Democrat political stunt is the invaluable human capital of the men and women that serve DHS. Under the Biden administration's open border policies, we had criminals coming into the country that are putting American lives at risk. Like in the case of 18-year-old Sheridan Gorman, just this week, murdered by an illegal alien who shouldn't have been here in the first place. Her sister is a student at Vanderbilt University in my district. This family is suffering unimaginable loss and pain, and I'm sick of it. And yet Democrats are still keeping DHS shut down, the very department in charge of protecting Americans at home. Because of Democrats' political games, TSA personnel have gone multiple pay periods without compensation. 95% of TSA's workforce is deemed essential, and we rely on them every day to keep us safe. These agents serve our country and keep us safe every day, and I'm thankful for President Trump and this administration for doing so. And yet Democrats are treating them like sacrificial lambs. This is absolutely no way to thank these brave men and women. Not only that, but Democrats are creating a compounding workforce shortage crisis for TSA. Already over 400 transportation security officers have separated from TSA, and because it takes 4 to 6 months to train a TSO, TSA hasn't finished fully training those hired to replace the officers that left during the last shutdown. If we reopen today, we won't be able to fully replace the officers that have quit because of Democrats' unnecessary and destructive shutdown. Ahead of summer, America's busiest travel season, and major events like FIFA, the Olympics, and America 250, not to mention the increased terror threat due to the conflict with Iran, Democrats are foolishly crippling TSA and putting American lives at risk. This ridiculous shutdown has gone on long enough. It's time for my Democrat colleagues to come to their senses. Now, I want to thank our witnesses for joining us, as I know you all are operating with a diminished workforce. Ms. McNeil, TSA lost over 1,000 TSOs during the last shutdown, and we've already lost another 400 during this shutdown. The fact is we don't have 4 to 6 months to train and surge workforce needs ahead of the World Cup. Can you talk a little bit more, expound on how you're preparing to accelerate preparedness ahead of the anticipated high traffic?
Thank you, Congressman. We are obviously watching our attrition rates very closely, looking at our ready pool for recruitment to see what we can do there as well. We have a national deployment force, which is a national force where we can surge in different locations. We're looking to increase those numbers and the training for officers to join that force, and it'll allow us to surge to these different locations. But I will tell you that we are in a very dire situation when it comes to our ability to staff the multiple different locations for the FIFA World Cup, as well as the base camps where the teams are going to be. I mean, this is going to be a really complex operation. And what's more, what we are seeing in this shutdown is that more experienced officers are leaving, and that expertise you can only make up with time and experience.
Thank you. Admiral, I want to talk a couple of questions on Coast Guard impacts on readiness. Sir, how has the shutdown impacted Coast Guard's access to maintenance facilities?
Sir, the United States Defense Industrial Base is already suffering. There's not enough capacity within it. So we work very hard to get the capacity we need. Now that we have ships in those yards and when they're doing maintenance, we haven't been able to pay them for 40 days. So we are seeing stop work orders come in on several of our ships, and then several of our vendors are saying they are not going to continue to work with the Coast Guard because they can't be guaranteed pay.
So, Admiral, so those are the cutters, aircraft, small boats, critical systems that are under contract that must be paused during the shutdown?
Yes, sir. So the payment of those, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do you know ballpark how many Coast Guard assets are going without maintenance due to funding gaps?
So, sir, right now, we are allowed to contract for that maintenance. It's then just dealing with the vendors that are providing it, and we're watching that number grow every day on those that are deciding to cut off the free support to the Coast Guard.
Great, thank you. And I'm out of time. Thank you, witnesses. We appreciate you being here today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes of questions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. You know, I've repeatedly listened to my colleagues suggest that this is a Democratic shutdown. Are you aware, Ms. McNeil, that there were at least 5 opportunities in the Senate to pay TSA, and it was blocked by Republicans? Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of the votes
Thank you.
on the
Thank
full
you.
Department of Homeland Security where
Ma'am, are you aware that there were 5 opportunities and it was blocked where we could have paid TSA? The answer is yes. Mr. Chairman, could I ask you to remind these individuals that they're under oath? Please.
Yes, the witnesses are reminded that they are under oath.
Thank you very much.
Answer the questions to the best of your ability.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you aware, Ms. McNeil, that in 2023, under the leadership of then Chairman Benny Thompson, TSA was granted a raise? Yes or no?
I am aware.
Are you aware that there wasn't a single vote on the Republican side in this committee to support that raise?
I don't know the details.
You knew that we voted, we did it, and you knew that, but you don't know how the vote went down.
I wasn't.
Well, I will tell you how it went down, ma'am. Democrats unanimously voted for it, Republicans unanimously voted against it, but you got that raise. That's important to note, because what that demonstrates is the support that Democrats have for men and women who put on the uniform and work for us every single day as we are fighting to make sure they're funded now. Ms. Barton, the state of Louisiana currently has 20 hazard mitigation and flood mitigation projects totaling some $71 million awaiting FEMA approval. The majority of these are stuck in former Secretary Noem's bottleneck approval process for any award over $100,000, which, as you might imagine, holds everything up. Will these projects finally be approved?
Hi, Congressman. I am aware that there are mitigation projects that are pending obligation. They do get funded out of the DRF. As soon as we are able to ensure that we have a healthy funding ability, we would be happy to work with your office and ensure that those obligations get made.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Ms. McNeil, how many total hours or weeks does a TSA officer candidate spend in training before being certified for duty?
In total, it takes about 4 to 6 months to fully
4 to 6 months, thank you. And of that time, what specific portion is dedicated to specialized detection skills, such as identifying concealed weapons, explosives, and other prohibited materials through the physical screening and advanced imaging technology?
I would say significant, but I can get you a breakdown.
Significant, very good. The administration, but you have ICE agents that are now there, and it was said in testimony that they were helping with screening. But you just said it takes 4 to 6 months of training. How can don't shake your head, ma'am, it's on the record. It was said by you or others at this table that they're there to help with screening. But they can't. Not when you in your own testimony moments ago to Representative McIver said you started training them on Monday. Ma'am, today is Wednesday. I'm asking the questions. Can you just wait for me to answer? Today's Wednesday. You said you started Monday. You also just said that it takes 4 to 6 months, which spells out exactly our fear, that it's nothing more than window dressing and cheap theater and political performance to bring ICE agents in who are, many of which are hardly trained to even do the functions of ICE, let alone to come to airports and do sophisticated screening and training that TSA officers take 4 to 6 months to be able to do, yet you suggest that they can do it with 2 days of training. How is that possible, ma'am?
So the ICE officers that are helping out at these key airports are not doing the specialized screening functions. They are doing the functions that don't take as much training. And
Which ones are those?
so those, as I mentioned earlier, helping man the queue, helping with divestiture.
Help man the queue, direct the flow.
Direct the flow.
So no training required for that at all. But you're paying TSA agents, or you're paying ICE agents to come to airports, and you're paying them a hefty sum with limited or no training to add insult to. I'm not sure why you keep making that face, ma'am. I'm asking you questions, and all day you have evaded the opportunity to answer honestly, which is why I asked the chairman to remind you and others that you're under oath. This is not a game. I don't care who took you outside and gave you a coaching lesson on how you should respond. I would hope they would tell you to answer honestly, to answer forthright, to not dance around and put yourself in position to possibly perjure yourself. This is a very serious hearing about dedicated workers deserving to be paid, and there were multiple opportunities to do that, even multiple opportunities to ask you specifically, would you support a standalone bill to make sure your people were going to be paid? And you said no. Why would you not want to? Mr. Chairman, my time is expired, but I will follow up.
I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the ranking member and associate myself with his commentary. Friends, members of the panel, I have a question for you, and I would like for you to extend your hand into the air if you believe this is the case. If you believe that the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, caused the shutdown, please raise your hand. Please raise your hand if you believe it caused the shutdown. Let the record reflect that no one has raised a hand. I ask this question because the president is putting politics above people. I have in my hand an article from The Hill. It is styled, Trump, no shutdown deal until Democrats support Save America Act. The real reason the shutdown continues is President Trump's requiring the passage of bills unrelated to the shutdown. That's the real reason. Let me read from the article in part. President Trump late Sunday, this was written on 3/23/26 a couple of days ago, said there will be no deal to end the partial government shutdown until Democrats join with Republicans to pass the Safeguard America Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act. Now, this article reads in part, Senator Majority Leader John Thune has reportedly said repeatedly, there aren't enough votes to get the bill over the finish line anytime soon. Trump has written that Republicans should support this bill and that they should somehow require Democrats to do so. But here's a quote from the president, and he's talking about Republicans and Democrats who don't support this bill. They will never be elected again. In other words, lump everything together as one and vote with 3 exclamation points, kill the filibuster. Now there is the real reason. The president desires to kill the filibuster. The requirement that you have 60 votes to get to cloture before you can pass a bill with 51. He wants to kill the filibuster. And if he can accomplish this, then he'll do some other dastardly things. But killing the filibuster is his goal, and as a result of this being his goal, he is pushing the Republicans to use 51 votes as opposed to continuing to use the rule that requires 60. The president doesn't care about the TSA workers. This is not about helping them. It's about getting his way. And he has complete control of the Republican Party. He really does. And given that he controls it, he is demanding that it obey his command to kill the filibuster. And he's providing them a means, a methodology by which this can be accomplished. Friends, the president does not really think that keeping these workers underpaid and not paid at all is an important issue as it relates to his presidency. I differ with him. And I want to defend the TSA workers as I close, because to send in ICE is an insult to them. There has not been any meaningful indications that the workers were not managing well the crowds that were there, the people who were coming in, the public, the flying public. There's not been any meaningful indication that they have been doing a good job. And to somehow conclude that ICE is necessary, notwithstanding the fact that a good many members of the flying public are antithetical to this, is an insult to them. I was in the airport just yesterday, and I had many people to approach me and tell me that they are afraid of ICE, and they would prefer that ICE not be at the airport. So I say, let's remove ICE, let's pass legislation to have the workers get paid, and let's end this attempt to eliminate the filibuster rule. The filibuster rule for the president is an obstacle that he plans to eliminate. I thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ranking members are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Earlier in this hearing, Mr. Pfluger incorrectly stated that this committee held no hearings on border security in 2021 and 2022. In fact, the committee held 6 full committee hearings and 13 subcommittee hearings in 2021 and 2022, and I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record those committee and subcommittee hearings.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record my letter signed by 33 members of Congress addressed to then Secretary Nome and Acting Administrator of FEMA, dated November 18th, 2025, calling for FEMA to expedite the awards for the $275 million in nonprofit security grant funding that Congress appropriated over a year.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Mr. Magaziner, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record a letter from 4 unions expressing support for the Democratic funding proposal for DHS.
Without objection.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
I have a UC request, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
Yes, I ask unanimous consent that the Hill article styled Trump no shutdown deal until Democrats support Save America Act, that it be inserted into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, witnesses, thank you very much for being here. The members of the committee may have some additional questions for you all, and we'd ask that you all respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7E, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Again, thank you all for your testimony today and for being here. And without objection, this committee stands adjourned.